All right. So just a reminder, next week or on Wednesday, even though we won't be in class and that's a wellness day, your brainstorming sheet is going to be due that day. Okay, it's not due till later that night. So, conceivably you could do it on Wednesday, but you're going to want to have some good ideas heading into that. Remember, even though you may have an idea that you already want to do, you still got to come up with 3 ideas for the actual brainstorming sheet. Because sometimes people have a really good idea, but there are reasons as to why it might not work that well. So I still want to hear 3 ideas from everybody. And it's obvious to me when you do the brainstorming sheet which one you want to do. It's usually the one you list first. So it's kind of obvious to me, but please do 3 ideas and follow those ideas throughout every question. Don't just abandon, the ideas that you don't like that much and not, address what needs to be done in that brainstorming sheet. The idea is to get you to think about, just get some brain juices flowing. And I'll help you with that, obviously, because we're going to, on the 12th, which is a week from today, so Friday. Yep. On Friday, we are going to do a contour of communication in here. And you're not going to really know what that is until next week when we start talking about it. But it's an outline. It's a skinny outline. And I've actually put some examples up, I believe, already for the contour of communication. So it'll be really important that you know what your idea is by the time you come in here on Friday. Now, you're not going to have a lot of time to think about it because you're turning this thing in on the 10th. Now I'm going to get it back to you on the 11th, but you're really going to have to say, okay, this is what I'm going to be going with, because you're going to start that skinny outline on Friday the 12th. So it's a very tight timeline, but it's doable, okay? Because I'll get you that feedback right away on those brainstorming sheets. And then we can talk a little bit about it on Friday if you're, still like, I'm not sure about this idea, Dr. Borland. Because what I'll do is I don't make the decision for you. If you send me 3 really good ideas, I say all 3 of these ideas probably would work, but here's the one that I really want to hear. So, and that's going to be up to you. You might say, well, I don't really like that one as much. I want to do this one, and that's fine as well. But I will try to lay out to you as much as I can why certain ideas are better than others. Okay? Questions about that? Questions on the Zoom about that? Okay. So what we're going to do today is, I got a couple things I want to share with you guys first before we start talking about the reading. But the reading is very quick. It doesn't take long to do it, but there's a lot of heavy concepts in there, important concepts in there. So, Alex is going to lead us through the notes today and some of the things that he thought were important from it, but then we'll go back and talk about some things that were important about it as well. Because if you'll notice from the video that you guys watched earlier in the week from Nancy Duarte, and I have posted that up on Brightspace, the book that you're reading is going to fall in line very much with that video, okay? Because that's the research that she's done, and then she wrote about it, obviously, in this book. I did send you guys an interesting article out about overtime starting a league of 16 and 18-year-olds. It'll be real interesting to see how that all works out. I suspect, in reading it, and I'm very critical about getting kids involved in uber competitive stuff that early. I'm worried that it's about overtime more than it is about the kids. That concerns me a little bit, and sort of trying to get an education. I mean, you got to get an education when you're 16, 17, and 18. It's, we've had these academies before. You see them in golf, you see them in tennis, okay? But this is the first time I've seen it kind of this way. And I will say that I'm very concerned about it. Yeah, did you have something, Kyle?
Yeah, I was just gonna say they said in the article something like they want to teach people how to build their own brand and educate themselves and understand economic something.
Right.
But like you said, I just think it's an overtime, like they're just trying to use the brands and stuff. So they want to build a brand for their players, but only so many kids are going to have that brand that actually sticks and that people want to watch and continue sticking, like following.
Yeah.
And not everyone's made for it, like we've been saying. So I mean, there's going to be kids who are like, oh, I'm a great basketball player. I want to make my own platform and this and that, and they go and do it, and they choke, like they can't handle the pressure.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just how I see it.
Yeah, I worry about, again, the education aspect of it. You still need to get an education when you're a young person, you know, and I'm just wondering how good the education's really going to be. Who knows? Maybe they could hire me. You know, maybe if they pay really well, I can go in there and teach some of those kids how to communicate better and write better or whatever. But I do worry about that because some of the kids that they're going to be getting probably are going to be pushed. You know, some of them are certainly going to come from meager backgrounds or poor backgrounds, and they're not going to necessarily be in situations where they got really good education before that. So it concerns me quite a bit. All right. So I'm going to share the screen here. Okay, so I don't know if you guys saw this. Greg McDermott, who's the head coach of Creighton men's basketball, was suspended for racially insensitive comments. Does anybody know what he said? Yeah.
I don't know what in regards he was saying, but he said he made some comment about a plantation or something. It just, I didn't even want to look into it. It just sounded ridiculous.
Okay. Yep.
You're gonna play with that effort, you may as well stay back on the plane.
Okay. Okay. So this is the quote I have. It's not exactly what Jake is saying over there, but maybe I don't have it right. So if it's different than this and it's what you're saying, then it's a lot worse what you're saying. But let's go with this for now because this is what was in the article. So basically the response from Creighton is to suspend him from all basketball activities. There was no length as to that. They don't really need to tell us, but they probably did need to make an announcement to the public saying we are taking some sort of action. So the question I have for you guys is, well, this is what they said. Oh, might help to move that out of the way. Probably an easier way to do this. Come over there. Okay, so there's the response from Creighton. I mean, they said some other things. This was the AD. And he apologized. You know, he did the things that you're supposed to do when you say something stupid like this. We must use this incident as an opportunity for growth and learning, which is a pretty typical thing to say when you're trying to figure out what to say. Yeah, Reese.
I said the last part they said, but it's clearly more work needs to be done. That's what I could tell that they're like, I usually even say that.
Right.
So I like how they worded that.
Yeah, clearly more work needs to be done. So I don't know who wrote it. Probably somebody helped the AD write this and send this out. My question for you is, since we don't know what Creighton is going to do, is this a fireable offense? What about you guys on the Zoom? What do you guys think? Let me just stop the share for a minute so I can see everybody's face. So I ask you guys this, is this a fireable offense?
I don't think it's fireable in itself, but if the players aren't going to respond to him after they know he said that, like, then like he's not really the coach of the basketball team anymore. Like, he doesn't have any control over them.
So what are you suggesting, John? Do you think the AD should go to the players and say, what do you think?
Yeah,
Or
he
give the
should
players that
definitely.
much power?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the players are really what matters. If you care about the players like the NCAA says they do, then they should give them some say in who's their head coach, I guess.
John says that with a little sarcasm. Okay. Anybody else on the Zoom? Is this a fireable offense? We're talking about plantation. Probably, I don't know what the makeup of the team is in terms of African American, Caucasian, whoever, Hispanic. I think if you have a lot of African American players on the team, they might find this a little more offensive than Caucasian players, although we should all find it offensive. So what do you guys think? Fireable?
I think honestly, if you asked this question a year ago, you would get a different answer from a lot of people. I just feel like a lot of stuff has changed. Not that it's changed, but it's been amplified in the past year, to some degree, especially in the sports world, with like quality and stuff like that. So I think a lot of the answers definitely will be changed from now till
Oh,
a
all right,
year.
Sean, let me give you a follow-up on that. Wouldn't McDermott know what's going on in society?
Yeah, he definitely should. That's why I think this year my answer would be a lot different than last year. I think it should be the same, but I think it definitely should change. I think he should have known. Personally, I don't think I would have fired him. But setting an example is also another thing that needs to be done. So yes, I agree that he should definitely have known and been aware of that before what he did.
Okay. So for the group here in class, what should Creighton, as I said, one of the things that they said in the story is that we probably will take some other actions beyond suspending him for Saturday's game against Butler. What should they do? What do you guys think they should do coming up forward? What kind of actions do they need to take now about this? Yeah.
I mean, if they're not gonna fire them, if that's not the route they want to take, they need to like openly and like actually have some sort of training on either just like racial insensitivity or something.
Yeah.
To just show that like, hey, we put him through this, like he's got to come out and say like, obviously my actions, my words weren't good, but I've learned from this program, and I don't know, something that can be tough because it's like you don't want to be more than just like some 1 day, 1 hour long assessment, whatever, and he goes and he's learned now, he's learned his mistake, but
Yeah.
it's got to be something that actually like is effective. So I honestly have no idea what they should do because I mean there's just multiple ways of looking at it.
Okay. Any other comments about what Creighton should do going forward? Yeah, let me get you on
I
the.
don't know about what they should do, but I think that what the coach said is more or less what they'll end up doing.
Yeah.
I think they'll send them to a training, they'll have to make a couple of public statements, they'll have to like publicly apologize to the team and to the university and to anyone who was offended. And after that, like whatever it is week long class they're gonna make them take, they'll just move on.
Okay. Again, there's other actions that they can take. Yeah.
I was wondering if the players had anything to say about it, if they released anything.
I don't know yet. I'm sure that there'll be some social media that Creighton's folks will have to look at, depending on what kind of limits they have on social media during basketball season. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a developing story, so we'll see what happens. I think the guy knows that he really messed up. Plantation is one of those trigger words. You're like, okay, well, it does not bring forth a lot of very nice images when we're talking about that. Okay. So again, this just goes back to all the things that we've been talking about in here about how words matter, and not just McDermott's words, the words of the college, going forward, because they've got to set a tone as well, and say, this is not okay. But you can't just say, hey, this is not okay, we condemn it, and we got to learn and grow from it. It's like, hey, what are you going to do next, after this? And not necessarily to say, hey, we don't want this to ever happen again, because it will. Maybe not at Creighton, but somewhere else. but they're going to be on the record basically saying this is how we've acted and how we've dealt with it. My view is that he probably should get suspended for the rest of the season. And that hurts because Creighton is going to play in the dance. I mean, they are going to dance. Dance. They are going to dance. They're going to go to the NCAA tournament. And that hurts as a coach not to be able to be there for that. To me, that's appropriate. You know, and again, you got to look back and see whether this guy's made comments like this before. What do they have in their HR files about this guy before you go ahead and let somebody go? Because we are human, we all do make mistakes. Okay. So let's share again here. So I wanted you guys to see something that I've been following a little bit. This is Emma Westalowski's LinkedIn page. Emma is a junior in our program. And I'm just going to show you her page because this is kind of where I want you guys to be at. Not now, but maybe, you know, the end of your junior years. I mean, she's obviously a top performer in our program. Not everybody's going to get the opportunities she's gotten, and I understand that. Okay. It's like I'm going to have to figure out a different way in, so hold on a second. I just got to go onto LinkedIn here and find her page so you guys can see it. Okay, so here we go. This is Emma's page here. So she and I have 98 mutual connections, which means she's been reaching out to people. She has 355 connections. You know, sometimes you get so many connections, you can't keep track of them. So it's not the number of connections, it's the fact that she's actually reaching out to some of them. And remember, LinkedIn is kind of it's like an electronic resume. Current junior, so she's got it updated. She's has some activity on here. She's got her experience. So Pivot Sports Group, sport management assistant. She does work in our office. Event staff at the Hoop Hall. Orientation leader, let's see. Event staff, orientation leader, featured speaker at MLB RBI, game operations internship, supervisor, Spalding Hoop Hall Classic, student intern at AHL, Valley Blue Sox, University of Massachusetts, in their athletics, liaison, Spalding Hoop Hall Classic. What do you think of that? Not bad, huh, for a junior in our program. So she's been very active. And that's not really why I'm showing this to you, although that is important. It's important to have a LinkedIn page. So Sean can tell you this because he's taken the practicum course, that it's something I really want you guys to think about and work on this summer because you can update it. And it's way better than a resume in a lot of ways because resumes are paper anyway, for the most part. And then you digitize them and you send them out to people. But LinkedIn's really important because people will look at your LinkedIn account once you've applied for something and see if there's a little bit more detail than maybe what's on your resume. And the beauty of LinkedIn is you can actually post projects up there and you can post you speaking somewhere. So I don't know if it's going to work that great for this class. So you guys have the masks on, but I had Alex Ricard. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's a sophomore in our program. And he was asking me, Dr. Borland, what should I put up on my LinkedIn page beyond the normal stuff? I'm like, well, you can put stuff up there, like documents up there. You can put your resume up there, and things that maybe you've worked on for an organization or in class. So LinkedIn is a lot better than that resume in many ways when you think about it. So just to let you know that this is something you guys should be thinking about doing this summer. And it's, there's a number of ways that you can learn how to do a LinkedIn page, when you're not in class. I usually go to YouTube when I don't know how to do anything. Like I'm trying to fix the window at home, like replaster or do something. YouTube, that's where I go right away. Anytime I have problems with the lawnmower, YouTube, I go to it right away. Same thing with LinkedIn. There are YouTubes up there that tell you how to do your LinkedIn page. There's so much information out there to help you guys do the things that you need to do. You don't necessarily need to rely on us for these things. You can use the Career Center as well, but you can also rely on what's out there on YouTube because there's a lot of good information. There's a lot of people that want to help others for whatever reason. They'll put instructional videos up there. I mean, I'm actually really good around the house now. I never used to be. I can actually remove the blades on my John Deere mower now, and I'm terrible at doing anything. So YouTube's great. All right, so we're gonna bring Alex up here, and he's gonna talk to you guys about the first section of the book. So why don't you come on up, and I will get this all set up for you. Let me wipe this thing off because I have my hand on it. No, you can sit right here where I'm sitting. So this advances it. So if you want to advance this, you can advance it this way, and then you can take it back that way. Okay? So give Alex your attention, guys.
You said the right one advances it?
Yep, the right one. So why don't you play with it a little bit?
All right.
There you go. Then you can go back. All right.
So today I'm going to be giving you guys a little bit of advice on how you can become a better presenter, and that's by knowing your audience. So chapter 1 in this talks about understanding the audience and talks about not being a self-focused presenter. So at the end of the day, the audience is the star of the show. You want them to spread your idea that you come up with at the end of your presentation. So you want to focus on them. And it gives an example of Yoda in Star Wars, how he gives Luke the understanding of the Force, and then he shows him how to use a lightsaber, and then he helps him fight the Empire. And so basically what it says is that you give your audience a gift that is going to help them, and then you give them a tool to use to get through the gift, and then you actually help them in their experience and in their fight. So then chapter 2 talks about segmenting the audience. So at your presentation, there's going to be a bunch of different groups of people, and you want to group those people based on research, and you want to pick the most influential subgroup at your presentation, and you want to talk to them because they'll have the most influence in spreading your idea. Chapter 3 is presenting clearly and concisely to senior executives. So a quote that I took from this one is, if you nail this, people with a lot of influence will become strong advocates for your ideas. Because these people are executives, they have many followers and hold a higher status. So therefore if they advocate for you, then more people will also want your idea and will go along with what they say. So when you're presenting to senior executives, you want to get to the point. You want to clearly map out what you're going to be summarizing for them, and you want to get to what they want you to get to, before anything else. So it talks about if they ask you for a flood in Indonesia and they want updates on that, give them that and like tell them the updates first and then get on to other things that are like needed. So once you go through what you want, what you're trying to get to in your presentation, and you practice it, then make sure that like each slide has all of like each slide that you have is going to be like giving them their roadmap to your point. So if you're talking for 30 minutes, then the first 5 minutes of your presentation is going to be your summary, and then the last 25 minutes is going to be for discussion and questions after that. And then chapter 4 talks about getting to know your audience on a personal level. So when you're personal with people, you're able to speak to them because the audience doesn't want to be spoken at. You want to talk to them, create discussion, empathize with them, get to know what they're like. And by doing this, you'll be able to get your idea across. Chapter 5 is defining how you're going to change the audience. So you want to think about how you want the audience to behave differently at the end of your presentation. So basically just everything in your presentation is a roadmap. So you want to just map out where you want your audience to be at the end of the presentation. And then lastly, finding common ground. So the quote I took is, if you tap into an object's natural rate of vibration or resonance frequency, it'll move. So what that is it's just when you find common ground with people, you don't have to pull them in or anything because they already believe what you're saying. So you want to find common ground with your audience before you go into your presentation. So that way they know, or you know, that what you're telling them they believe in, and you don't have to try and get them to understand your idea. That is all I've got.
I want to go back through some of the concepts that he shared. Look at some of the things I underlined from the chapters. And it's a real easy read. You know, I mean, it's very easy to navigate and get around this thing. So let's go back a little bit. So understanding the audience. So she talked a lot about this in her presentation. One of the things that I underlined on page 3 was use their desires and goals as a filter for everything that you present. So it's easy to say, hey, understand the audience, but you really do got to know. And again, sometimes it's difficult because you're talking to people that have jobs maybe that you don't really understand that well. You know, so Dr. McAllister is my supervisor in the sport management program, and I have to really think about, you know, before I present a change or an idea to him, if it really aligns with what he wants for the department. And before that, I got to know that. So it's important when you're in these meetings to actually take notes and think about what it is that that person might want or might need from the job. Okay. So you've got to be a keen observer, almost have an interest in psychology and sociology as well, to understand what people want. So hopefully you guys, as Alex was talking, understand how this connects back to Berlow's model. We talked about source and receiver being on the same page. And again, Berlow was really onto something. I don't know that he knew he was onto it, but this idea that, you know, and we could use the example that we talked about with overtime. So we talked about, we talked about overtime and how they're starting this new league, right? Or thinking about starting a new league. If you read that article, the guy's basically saying we're the only country that stops 16 to 18-year-olds from starting their career early. you know, and basically when he's saying that is he's reaching out to these parents and these, you know, basketball players who don't necessarily want to focus on being high school students necessarily, or they want to be able to start harnessing that talent, you know, sooner and sooner. Yeah, Reese.
So just so you like present the document college, or you have to, if you're going to present something, you have to make sure it's kind of like within his beliefs or the.
Doesn't have to be within his beliefs, but it also has to, I have to understand that his desires are way different than mine. My desire is always to make sure that students are having a great experience here, you know, at Springfield College, you know, whether it's I'm in the classroom or I'm talking to them one-on-one. And his desire might be more numbers based, like, hey, we need more students to come in every year kind of thing, because he gets pressure, you know, from high upper level administration. So right now we're trying to hire somebody new, and we've been discussing, you know, who would be the best fit. And it's been a really interesting discussion. His interests, he's trying to find somebody that can teach some classes at a course he teaches now. Whereas my interests are more, well, we need to hire somebody that likes to sit down and talk to students the way a Coursey does. Right, so big shoes to fill. So my interests and the faculty's interests might vary a little bit from what his are, but I have to keep his in mind.
So is that similar to the persuasive presentation?
Yes, yeah, and I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that in a minute here. Okay. So Alex did talk about this pretty well, walk people through why the initiative matters to them and to the organization. You know, the reason it's important to explain why it's important to the people that, you know, and why the audience is the hero is because you're going to need them to help you do this. You know, and you might be an outside consultant doing this, saying, hey, your organization needs to do this kind of thing. You know, but if you don't explain to them what their part is in it, and you're just talking at them like this organization needs to do this, and you don't really include them in the conversation, they're going to tune you out, which is one of the things that the reading talked about. Okay, so segment the audience, pick the most influential person in the room and talk to them. Okay, so you got to be careful with this. I agree with what he's saying here. You guys are all going to pick stakeholders, and that is one of the things that you're going to do on your brainstorming sheet. I ask you to do that at the very end. So if you are presenting on, for example, so if we were presenting on moving the dimensions, you know, the pitcher's mound back, moving the bases further apart in Little League World Series, if we were going to do that, we'd have to think about who our internal stakeholder is. Who's the most influential person that actually can make that change? Well, whoever the head of the Little League World Series organization is, I don't know who that is, but you got to find out who that person is. And that's who you're going to mostly make your arguments toward, okay? But you're also going to have external people that, or an external audience that can put pressure on that internal audience. So that might be players. You know, players might be like, hey, I would like a little longer or bigger dimensions on the baseball field. Because if I got a kid that's 6 foot, 12 years old that's pitching against me, I want to actually have a little bit of time to actually swing the bat. You know, so you got to figure out who those two audiences are. But you can't have a conversation or a presentation that's just geared toward those audiences. You still have to have some general comments that you're making. But you do, you know, when you go into that, and when you do your bigger outline, I'm going to ask you to really think about what arguments you would include to at least get that audience interested in both those audiences. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. Okay. All right, so present clearly and concise to senior executives. One thing that I want you to think about with what Alex was saying is that these people are very impatient, okay? You're only gonna get 5 minutes before they're gonna start asking you questions. So that's why that summary piece is really important, and also doing what they asked you to do, whatever, you know, if they said, hey, we need an update on this, you better do it because they're gonna remember. And it's a lot of, hey, don't waste my time. So the presentation that you guys are giving in here is going to be unfettered and uninterrupted. Nobody's going to interrupt you. I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm not going to say anything other than action, go. And then I'll start taping you on the camera. But that's not how a lot of presentations work. A lot of them are going to be a little more interactive. I'm letting you guys go for 13 to 15 minutes because I want to see what you can do in that time. But realistically, there's all different kinds of presentations and communication. And a senior executive is going to be like, hey, they're going to, they're not going to let you go for 13, 15 minutes. They're going to, they're going to interject. So it better be a little bit more interactive. Now, that doesn't mean that you guys can't ask questions of your audience when you give your presentations. Perfectly fine to do that. Just don't forget who you're talking to. You're not talking to your classmates anymore, not in this particular presentation. You're talking to your audience. And when I've had students actually ask somebody in class to play a role and be like, hey, could you be the CEO of this company, or could you be Commissioner Roger Goodell for my presentation? Perfectly fine to do that and have them play a role, okay? Get to know your audience. So I want to go to my notes here on this. Questions 15 or pages 15 and 16 are incredibly important for your presentation. The questions that they ask in bold there will help you put your presentation together. So definitely look at those questions, because you're going to be able to come up with content based on answering those things when you know what your topic's going to be. Particularly on page 16, how might they resist? I'll tell you right now that I will be looking for an opposition argument in your presentation. You need to have one. You're like, Dr. Borland, why do I want to have an opposition argument? That's going to bring in doubt. No, it's not. Basically, it's all you're doing is you're acknowledging that there is opposition to this. Bring up one of the opposition arguments to whatever your idea is, and then blow that argument out of the water. Okay? That's what you want. That's why you want to bring it up. Because people are thinking of that. Well, did you think of this? Yes, I did. The one way to actually convince people that your idea will work is to know what the opposition arguments are, and actually bring one of them up and say, this is why this opposition argument doesn't hold water, all right? So I have two really strong requirements for this presentation that I will point out. I mean, there's other requirements, let's face it, but bringing in that opposition argument is important. You need to tell a story during this, whatever it's gonna be, whether it's a personal story or a story that you've read about somebody else. You will have to have that in here, okay? Define how you're going to change the audience. How do I want them to behave differently? One of the things that it's important to mention, and when we get into the contour of communication next week, is you do have to actually say to them, this is the action I need you to take, okay? If we're going to make this idea happen, there's going to be a call to action at the very end of your contour of communication. And that call to action is, okay, we've heard your presentation. Now, what do we do next after this? See how I'm doing on time here. So that will be at the end. So you'll give your presentation, you'll do a summary at the end, like here are some of the arguments that I've talked about. And then you're going to say, this is what you guys need to do now. It's like anything. It's like a cover letter. When you say to them at the very end, I look forward to hearing from you. So you're asking them to take an action. That's a little bit tacit, but in this presentation, you've got to say to them, this is what needs to happen next. And then you end the presentation. Okay. And then finding common ground. So this is a great definition of resonate that Alex has up here. In Duarte's other book, this is in the very first chapter about resonance and finding common ground. So think about it from a dating standpoint. I'm sure some of you guys have been out on dates before. Maybe not though. I don't know about this group. This group looks a little suspicious to me. But usually you date somebody based on finding common ground with them. Okay. And you're like, wow, it's really cool to get to know you, and that's kind of how it is with presentations too. You're not dating the people that you're presenting to, but at least you're finding things that they're interested in, or, that might interest you. So one of the examples that she shared in there was about, she had to give a presentation to some beer craft people. And she goes, I don't know anything about beer. So I did the research. And that's one thing that you guys do when you date. When somebody says, I like this, you start researching little gifts for that person that you like, right? I'm trying to remember back when I was actually dating somebody if I did stuff like that, but I'm sure I did. It's like, oh, you like Mexican food? Well, I'm going to do a little research on this restaurant in my area because I hear it's really good Mexican food. Same thing when you're giving a presentation. Same thing when you're interviewing with somebody. That's why LinkedIn is such a valuable tool, because you find out, and she even mentions this, is you find out who's going to be at that presentation and you try to find out a little bit about them. That's interesting. Okay. And this is a really good lesson when you start networking with somebody, because when you start networking with people, if the conversation is about you and what they can do for you, that relationship is not going to go very far. Okay. You've got to actually learn something about them and figure out a way, even if you're a student, to create value for somebody that's been out in the business for 15 years. If you can do that, they are going to create value for you, but you got to create value for them first. So I hope you guys are understanding that I'm trying to bring in other examples beyond giving presentations to these lessons that Duarte is talking about, because it's not just about giving presentations. And if you guys think that's all this class is about, or this segment and this module, you're going to lose some key points here, because you can use a lot of these lessons for networking, for cover letter writing, for interviewing. A lot of this stuff comes together, the importance of understanding your audience. Okay. All right. So you guys remember this from not too long ago. I do want to highlight the, I don't know if my thing, see if this works. Oops. I want to highlight the fat outline. Okay. So the fat outline, let me just go back. The fat outline is going to be due 1 week before you present. And I will provide examples of fat outlines that were done in this class. But one of the things of the fat outline that I'm going to ask you to do is create what's called a stakeholder argument box. Okay? I invented that name. Wow, it's really, really memorable. Not at all. But at the very beginning of that fat outline, you're going to come up with 5 arguments or 5 pieces of information that you think is going to resonate or move your audience. And then you're going to start your fat outline. And that fat outline is going to be more detail than what you provided in your contour of communication. Contour of communication is a skinny outline. That's what we're starting with. And then you're going to move on to a fat outline once we do a little more discussion in this class. But the fat outline is essentially going to be your presentation kind of written out in shorthand. I don't want you to memorize it, of course. We talked about that. But this is what your stakeholder box might look like. Okay. So this was a presentation given by Kelly Chapdelaine last semester, and it was talking about how the International Olympic Committee should allow more gymnasts to compete. Right now it's down to 4 per team. It used to be 6. I think they're going to go back up to 5 at some point. But she said, listen, this is my internal audience, the IOC. And my external audience is global gymnastics unions, which there's different NGBs in every country. So there's different national governing bodies, which is what she should have said. But she came up with all these ideas. You guys will have to do it too. 5 ideas for each one. And you're convincing them. Okay. So you start with this on your outline, and then you've got to actually discuss some of these things in the outline. So what happens a lot of times is people come up with these great, persuasion pieces. And then I read the outline. I'm like, where are they? They're not in here. So they got to be in there. Okay. So as you guys can understand, hopefully we're building this thing as we go. First thing is the brainstorming sheet. You know, that's due a week from Wednesday, or this past Wednesday. That's what we're going to start with. So spend a little time this weekend thinking about it if you haven't come up with your 3 ideas yet. Let me stop the share here. Andres, do you want to ask any questions of the students? I don't know. I know you're watching or you're listening.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So that's it for today. I will see you guys on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday of next week. Kyle, I'll get you some comments about what you need to do on Monday. I forget who's going on Tuesday, but I'll have those thoughts to them on Sunday for that reading. And then on Friday, we're going to do a little contour of communication. So it'll be a pretty intense week. So enjoy your weekend. It's not supposed to be that warm this weekend, unfortunately, but it is what it is. I'll stay on Zoom for a few minutes if anybody has any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Will the notes be due tonight or will it be Sunday again?
What would you prefer, Joe?
I don't personally, I'd probably pick Sunday, but I mean, it's your call.
I'll send a note out. I'll give you guys till Sunday. That's okay.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Have a good weekend as well.
All right.
I had some computer problems beginning of class. I'm not sure if you're.
I saw you come on.
All right, good. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
We'll see you. See you.